So I would like to invite the next speaker, Professor Chakrabarty, with a topic 10 common mistakes in laboratory mycology, please.
Again, good morning. How many microbiologists are there in this hall? Can you raise the hand, those who are microbiologists? So rest all other are clinicians. No, there are certain numbers. Okay. So I'm going to discuss the 10 common mistakes in laboratory mycology. This is a very important topic and we need to understand that we like to improve daily. In case of laboratory investigation, generally we do mistakes in three areas: pre-analytical error, analytical error, and post-analytical error. Pre-analytical error means sample collection, though you may not be responsible, clinicians are responsible, but sometimes you have to guide the clinician. Transport of the sample, that is also very important. Your problem comes here in analytical areas, that is microscopy, culture, antifungal susceptibility testing, serodiagnosis, molecular diagnosis, and therapeutic drug monitoring. And finally, it is the interpretation of the test result and real-time communication. Improper collection and processing, if its sample is not good, then there is problem in case of the diagnosis. Superficial fungal infection like say suppose dermatophytes, mycetoma, especially in mycetoma you have to collect the granules. Like here, this is a dermatophytic infection. Wherefrom you have to collect the sample is very important. You have to scrape from the margin, not from the center. Center will not have the fungi which you are desiring. So it is the margin wherefrom you have to collect the sample. Next, in case of mycetoma, hunt for the granules. If you can get the granule, you can really identify it. You look into the undersurface of the scab covering the sinus. Sometimes you have the dressings which are there where you can find the granules. You can do biopsy, and sometimes in purulent material you can do it. Coming to the keratitis, generally keratitis, when you collect the sample, it is better if you can do a bedside inoculation. Carrying the sample, the swab is no use. So it is the scraping you have to collect. And scraping, usually we desire that these are all saprophytic fungi which produce the infection. So just if you have got some culture like this, it doesn't help. So what we do is that C inoculation. C-shaped or particular shaped of inoculation so that the growth is coming along the line of inoculation. That would be very important. That is there. Collect tissue in saline, not in formalin for fungal infection. If several times biopsy tissues are sent in formal saline, especially for histopathology, that would not help in case of mycology diagnosis. Whenever you are doing final aspiration, collect good amount for KOH and inoculate at the bedside. We generally now send the lab person whenever the cytopathologist is doing final aspiration so that inoculation is done at the bedside. That is very important. CSF sample, just 1 ml CSF may not help. Especially in case of Cryptococcus meningitis, generally clinicians tap a lot of CSF to reduce the intracranial pressure. Try to collect as much CSF as possible. Do the centrifugation, that is very important. If you have got a pus sample, that is easier. You can do the aspiration from that material. But in case of respiratory sample, the problem is it is always get colonized from the upper respiratory tract. So there is a problem. So this is in case of deep abscess CSF, this is in sputum BL. And here you have to look into whether it is a saliva or it's an proper sputum is there or not. In case of saliva, you see a lot of epithelial cell. But in case of the sputum, you need the pus cell, so it would not be useful for your sample. Transport conditions, sputum is usually sent in sterile screw cap container. BL sample or bronchoscopy fluid, sterile screw cap container. CSF, if it is delayed, don't put at 4 degrees centigrade. Put at just room temperature, that is desirable. Whereas in urine, if there is delay beyond 2 hours, then refrigerate the sample. That is very important. Otherwise, candida may overgo. Blood, usually nowadays we are doing the backtake or Bacti-Alert, but those who don't have the automated system, even they can use the biphasic media. That is, biphasic means one solid surface, another is the liquid phase, where you can collect. Tissue biopsy, always I say that tissue should not be frozen or allowed to dehydrate prior to culture. So put it in a sterile saline and transfer to the laboratory. That is very important. Swab is not a good specimen and try to avoid it. That is very important in case of this. Criteria for specimen rejection, absence of patient identification. If it is not there, so you don't accept that sample. Sputum specimen, if there is more than 25 squamous epithelial cell as per low power field, just reject that sample. A dried out swab is also not helpful, it should be rejected. The sample submitted in improper container, like unsterile bottle, that is not helpful. The 24-hour sputum or urine specimen, don't do it. There is no use of doing it, accepting for doing fungal infection. So after these two mistakes, next mistake 3 is the clinician mistake. Mostly that is really create problem in laboratory. Because the clinician may not suspect, that's our problem. I'm giving you a case again, a non-diabetic 59-year-old female presented with diarrhea and melena. She had nausea, vomiting, decreased appetite, no fever. Investigators shown there is low hemoglobin, albumin low, serum folic acid is more than 23 nanogram. He has got more or less a iron deficiency there, ferritin gone high up. So there is the nutritional anemia which had been considered, treated, transfused whole blood and intravenous iron. The patient had the problem of melena, so colonoscopy had been done. It had shown that there is severe inflamed rectum. Left colon with multiple ulcers have been seen. So immediately thought it can be of amoeba, but amoebal serology was negative. CT of the abdomen showed pancolitis and diffuse mucosal avid enhancement and submucosal edema. Maximum wall thickness, you can see there is the wall thickness is there of about 10 millimeter in transverse colon. Initial biopsy showed features of active colitis, thinking that as it is not amoebic, is it ulcerative? So thinking it can be of inflammatory bowel disease, she was treated with antibiotic, discharged on 9 days with oral prednisone 40 milligram. The patient on 16th day, she presented with severe vomiting, distension of abdomen, pedal edema, disorientation with blood pressure going down further. The same patient, investigation showed everything had gone altered. Hyponatremia, metabolic acidosis, hypoxemia, WBC count gone high with neutrophil, creatinine has also raised, urea 52, even the liver function test got altered. Bilateral lung field showed ground glass appearance with dense basal consolidation and pleural effusion. CT abdomen showed there is possible perforation because there is pneumoperitoneum, so suggestive of bowel perforation. Emergency laparotomy was performed and resected segment of the ileum, and you can see this is completely a gangrenous gut. Now, microscopy showed there is presence of this type of hyphae. Can you diagnose it? Mucor. It's a mucormycosis which is there. Clumps of pauciseptate, unevenly wide hyphae, having wide angle branching. The patient died because of multi-organ failure, septic shock on 22nd day. Question is, why the patient died? Could the disease diagnosed early? I would say that the initial biopsy, it was a superficial biopsy which has been considered as acute colitis. I think a biopsy, a deeper biopsy, if would have been taken, that would really diagnose this patient much earlier. It was given steroid and discharged. So you can imagine where is the problem. You know, you heard in the morning, Dr. Professor Lee has mentioned the dermatologic manifestation. I have already shown you earlier a case where that was a case of a suspected fusarium which should have been thought about. So here I would say that clinicians should be aware about the skin lesions and they should take a biopsy from that properly. You can have primary skin lesion, you can see primary skin lesion because of opportunist fungi, or there is disseminated infection which can manifest with the skin lesion. Can you identify what it is? Which are the two things? Anyone? None of you? This is aspergillosis at the cannula which was there. And this is a very typical lesion of fusarium. Already I have shown you. This is a central necrosis, very painful ulcer. Whenever you find this, think about, can it be fusariosis, especially in case of the hematologic malignancy, when they are undergoing induction chemotherapy. I can show you different presentations which are there, like in aspergillus, you can have this type. Cryptococcus, sometimes they have papulovesicular eruption. You can pick it up. Mucor, usually there is a blackening because blood vessel gets thrombosed with this fungus which is angioinvasive. And there is eschar formation. Fusariosis, I said central necrosis. Central necrosis. Pheohypomycosis, there is usually they are producing nodule or plaque formation which is being there. So these are the all presentation of skin lesion in AIDS patients. Any suspicion? You have already learned a lot from Professor Lee. Now you should say what it is. Anyone? Each of them is a separate disease. These are all skin lesion in patients with AIDS. This is the emergomycosis which is coming up. Emergomycosis africanus. I said yesterday in the first lecture, this is also in case of our country, we have seen emergomycosis pastorina, they have got similar lesion. This is a lesion in histoplasmosis that had been there. This is talaromycosis, very typical lesion, which had been already showed by Professor Lee in case of this. This is molluscum contagiosum type of lesion which is there. Sporotrichosis is very rare type of manifestation. I don't expect you to say this is a sporotrichosis. This is a disseminated variety of cutaneous lesion of sporotrichosis which is very, very rare. But these are our cases of emergomycosis due to emergomycosis pastorina. We had already 2 patients where we have seen initially thought to be of histoplasma but came out to be emergomycosis pastorina. Friend, this is a very interesting case. You can see there is a swelling in this shoulder and this is the MRI picture. The clinician would think immediately, can it be a tubercular shoulder which is there. So this sample had gone to the tuberculosis lab. And in the tuberculosis lab, the pus which had been collected from it had done the acid fast stain. If you have a good medical microbiologist can pick it. This was Cryptococcus, which was there. If you are not seeing just acid fast bacilli is not there, so it's not tuberculosis, but you can easily pick up that this is a case of cryptococcosis. Now coming to the mistakes, again going back to the lab. What do you feel? Is it hyphae or pseudo-hyphae? There are microbiologists, please, hyphae or pseudo-hyphae? There are both of these, there are two samples. No answer? Microbiologists, please come up. Hyphae or pseudo-hyphae? Yes? These are none. Not hyphae, not pseudo-hyphae, these are all artifacts. Very good. Very good smear. What do you feel? Mucor? Broad, accepted. Van Hoek has become a good microbiologist. He said, no. What it is? These are capillary vessels with water droplets. Sometimes it may be like this, you can see in microscope. Is it histo? Even the Methi is shaking his head, no. But then you have to say what it is. You can see there are very interesting small cells inside. These are all strain precipitated. I'm saying these things so many times the microbiologists do the mistake. What it is? You can see small yeast cells and all this. This is just a bacterial contamination of the sample. These are all bacteria. Now this is fungus, at least you will say. But you know, sometimes your stain is contaminated. So you can see both hyphae, spores, lot of things which can be there that can make a mistake. So this is fungal contamination of stain. Again coming back, hyphae, pseudo-hyphae. To be or not to be? Again, hyphae or pseudo-hyphae? So many times people do these mistakes. I'm not going to tell you, you have to tell yourself. Is it Aspergillus or Mucor? Aspergillus or Mucor? Is it Aspergillus? These are the bacterial rods. So you see that what I'm trying to impress you, I'm not trying to discourage any of you. I know your good expertise is there, but you have to be a bit careful while going for it. Next, come to the next mistake is the analytical blood culture. You know, blood culture, those who have bacterial or bacterial may not be so much problem, but so many people still in peripheral laboratory use the conventional culture system. Usually we do the subculture and after 24 hours, if there is no growth, we usually discard it. But what we have found that if you just keep this plate for 48 hours instead of discarding after 24 hours, small pinpoint colony which comes out for yeast. When we didn't have our bacterial or bacterial system, our bacteriologists, where I encourage them, please keep the plate for another day. And you'll know so many cases of yeast infection we picked up. So these are the really helpful for this aspect. Whenever you get a tissue specimen, be careful. If you are suspecting mucor, don't homogenize. If you homogenize, you will lose this mucor because mucor is accepted, and because of this, lot of cases isolation fails in case of mucormycosis. Coming to the mistake in identification. You know, we are over dependence in case of commercial system. Dr. Methi has just mentioned what are the different names. So if Vitek gives some name, we immediately send it there. Whether Methi or any clinician suffer for that, we don't mind. But you know, many a times, especially if you see in case of Candida auris, all these are the different identification which have been shown. API, in case of Candida auris, identified Rhodotorula glutenis, Candida sex, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Vitek, Candida hemoloni, Candida famota, BD phoenix, Candida hemoloni, microscan. So all these are making mistakes. Then coming to the histopathology versus microbiology. You know, several times histopathologists all go by septate hyphae, means aspergillus, looking aseptate go by mucor. But if you see, what are the difference? Here it had been said of aspergillus came out to be mucor. This has been suggested of mucor came out to be aspergillus. So many difference may come when you really do the culture. Coming to the very important issue is antifungal susceptibility testing, that is mistake 7. Majority of the people use Vitek system. Those who are not reference lab, mostly they are using Vitek system. But what we have seen when we did a study across India, 1400 candidemia cases, we found that discordance between the Vitek and the CLSI or UCAS is more than 10%. So what I suggest is that if you are getting susceptible, report it. Don't just report resistant like that, rather confirm this aspect. That is very important. So we need the CLSI standard microbroth technique which is there. But here microbroth technique, while you are doing something which are very important, like trailing growth, especially certain Candida species at fluconazole concentration above MIC showed reduced but persistent growth. In absence of sufficient experience, this laboratory labeled this as drug-resistant isolate. That is not correct. You need to have this 80% inhibition. Better results can be seen at pH 5.5. Testing media. In Cryptococcus, while doing the susceptibility, it should contain some glucose, 1% glucose which is being said. If pH varies due to any reason, it can also hinder the growth, resulting in misleading results. That is very important. Incubation time. In case of Cryptococcus, we generally recommend for 72 hours. But in case of fluconazole, reading beyond 24 hours can dramatically increase the changes in misreading the isolate, showing trailing growth as resistant, as I have already mentioned. Similarly, in case of filamentous fungi, echinocandins to be read at 24 hours. That's very important. Echinocandin susceptibility you should read at 24 hours, whereas in azole and Pauline it is 48 hours. Any deviation can read again misleading results. You know, several times, how many of you are doing microbroth dilution? How many of you are doing microbroth dilution for susceptibility? No one? What about microbroth dilution? Generally, what it happens for microbroth dilution, we put all the dilution of the drug early, keep it at 70 degrees centigrade, and later when we need to do, we do the susceptibility. But here problem comes, like suppose when you are doing the susceptibility of Cryptococcus, you have a dilution of echinocandin. You may give a report, Cryptococcus resistant to echinocandin. Echinocandin does not work. So there is no need of giving an echinocandin report in case of Cryptococcus. So there is sometimes you may take care in this area. Sometimes you may have mixed yeast growth. That is a problem. And if you have not chrome agar, sometimes you may miss it. And then you may give a wrong report in case of susceptibility. Coming to the mistakes in case of galactomannan and beta-D-glucan. Here I would say collection of this sample is very, very important. Exclusive collection in vacuum, that is very important. Use excess skin disinfectant in swab to avoid friction of cotton with skin. If you are using less amount of disinfectant and rub the skin that area, in beta-glucan you can get false positivity. So use excess amount of disinfectant in the swab while collecting blood. That is very important. Do not collect the blood from the line. There would be a dilution error. That's very important. You have to separately take from peripheral line the blood for doing it. If the patient is on dialysis, at least 5 to 6 days after dialysis, you should collect blood to reduce glucan interfering substances. Serum separation. Here it is very important in your lab, avoid hemolysis. Allow sufficient time to clot. Otherwise, there would be problem. Use calibrated centrifuge as optimum speed. Serum transfer should be in biosafety cabinet. These are very important. Performance of both these tests should be in a separate biosafety cabinet. That is very important. Plastic ware and tips, etc., sterile, pyrogen free, which should be used. You should have a proper, accurate pipetting. I can tell you, both these tests requires training. Otherwise, it's not just you buy beta-glucan or galactomannan and start doing it. You can really land up in trouble giving false positive result. Already this has been discussed, but again I like to emphasize that both these tests has got a lot of false positivity which need to be taken care of. You should look into this patient history about medication, infusion, medical intervention, if there is, as I have said about hemodialysis, then bacterial infection if there is, that can also give false result. Environmental presence of different fungi which can give you a false result. Food intake. Dr. Van Hoek had shown after taking ice pop, there is galactomannan comes false positive. Even the patient have yogurt taken and you are doing galactomannan, it can give false positive. Pasta, that is another issue. Be careful. So you have to, when collecting the sample, you have to take the history. These are the very important in case of this. So what I generally suggest in case of interpretation of non-culture diagnostic for invasive candidiasis, if blood culture is negative due to low level of candidemia, beta-glucan or PCR assay unlikely to make diagnosis very reliably. If the patient is of low risk group, positive result does not help, but negative result exclude the disease. If the patient is high risk group, a positive result increases likelihood of invasive candidiasis. But general temptation is that because of short turnaround time of this process, you like to give early therapy, we give the result and clinicians start therapy. We tend to believe non-culture diagnostic tests can identify blood culture negative primary or secondary deep-seated candida infection. But what I suggest is that too high positive results should be compelling for diagnosis. And similarly, multiple negative results should exclude the diagnosis. So single test, instead of having blood culture negativity, should be taken cautionly in this aspect. Therapeutic drug monitoring. I don't think you are doing therapeutic drug monitoring, but this is routinely now done in a lot of microbiology laboratory in our country. Here, the inappropriate medical indication may a problem need proper medical reasoning in this issue. Inappropriate sample collection, when you like to collect the sample. Like in case of voriconazole TDM, you have to have the trough level. Just taking the next dose of medicine, before that you should collect the blood. That is very important. Inappropriate method, generally bioassay people do, but I would say that at least HPLC gives a much better result. Inappropriate interpretation, that is also very important. Finally, the mistake is that in case of interpretation of the report. This has been stressed several times by yesterday, presence of candida in sputum and urine. This should not be really help in case of diagnosis, either respiratory tract infection or in case of urinary tract infection. The question comes, shall I report in this situation? You know, a lot of times I had this really this problem or hurdle I have to face. I said, like suppose clinician said, this is a patient who is absolutely cell count is 0, means neutrophil count is 0. And the patient's BL sample, not the sputum, BL sample shows pure growth of candida. How can you deny it? I said, deny this sputum report or BL report. If you want to suspect this patient is having sepsis, candida sepsis, go ahead. That is clinical. Don't take my help of microbiology laboratory. That's very important in case of candida. IDSA guidelines said candida from this respiratory sample usually indicate colonization. Candida in urine, usually it is the colonization. Neutropenic patient, very low birth weight infant, where you may think about it, that it has got significance. Patient undergoing urologic procedure, when you may start thinking it may be important, but no significance. Already Dr. Banhock has mentioned yesterday for counting candida in case of both tract or urine. So friends, what I try to tell you within this short time is that knowledge of pre-analytical, analytical and post-analytical parameters are essential. We need training both of the mycologist, technical staff and as well as clinician in this area. You must participate in EQUAS program, External Quality Assurance Scheme. I hope it is there in Vietnam. You should participate in it. Interaction with clinician is very important. Call alert is essential. If you have identified a very important pathogen, immediately inform the clinician. Molecular techniques help in improving analytical skill. Though automation is difficult in mycology laboratory, but research is directed now towards the point of care test, which might be more useful. Thank you for your kind attention.